Hello, everyone, and welcome to the extra spooky edition of the Collision Live. It's me, your host, Daniel Blackaby, and I'm joined at the desk, as I always am, by the trick to my treat, Mr. Samuel David Camp. How are you doing?
Boo.
Happy Halloween, everyone. How you doing?
Good. I was realizing like 10 minutes before we started that this would have been the episode that had we thought of it in advance, we should have all dressed in our favorite characters and costumes, but alas, another year has gone by and we have yet to do.
We missed the ball, the opportunity to be on camera wearing spandex. So unfortunately, I don't know.
Another dream dashed.
Hey, but there is always next year. Hey, excited to have you guys join us. A lot of things going on. We moved our live streams to Wednesdays a couple weeks ago, and then realized that Wednesdays are probably the worst day we could probably do. So we haven't been live for a couple of weeks. We kind of pre-recorded. We were kind of out and about and doing various different things, but we are back live. So if you're joining us, I encourage you guys, jump in the conversation in the comment section, join the conversation, have some interesting topics and things. Got a backlog of stories and stuff to talk about. And we will, kind of our main conversation, we will get into the Halloween discussion, always kind of contentious and interesting and valid concerns and valid arguments and all that kind of stuff. So we'll have a bit of a conversation through that. But you're back. You were globetrotting off in the world.
Yeah, we survived an earthquake in Panama, so that was exciting. We were on the 19th floor of a building, and it just like all of a sudden started to sway. And so my wife and I grabbed the kids and ran down 19 flights of stairs. Huffing and puffing, and only to realize, it was just a tremor, nothing to be concerned about. So it's like, I've never had that before, so I thought we were all going to die.
The building might collapse, but hey, no one panicked.
And my parents, there was a gas leak in their apartment, so it was.
So we're just glad to have you back at all.
Yeah,
for the
lucky to be here. Every day is a gift.
Not introducing our new co-host. But again, there is a lot of interesting stuff to jump into. So why don't we kick things off like we always do here with our first segment. We have Cultural Conversations. So a couple kind of maybe more like meaty conversations, interesting stuff that we're going to get into. But I thought we'd just start off. There was sort of a pop culture sphere of the news, a new trailer. Ant-Man, I forget what the Quantumania, the third Ant-Man movie, the 78th MCU movie. These things just keep coming. They released the first trailer for this. I'm not even sure when this comes out. I think early 2023, I would guess. You saw this trailer. What were your initial take? Are you pumped to enter the quantum realm?
I cannot wait to not see this. Yeah, I don't know. It's like, let's throw some cotton candy colored CGI and make it all about the world within a world and a universe that's going to end if we don't get the thing and all the right pieces, and disaster.
Yeah, I feel somewhat, again, before anyone says that I'm just some cranky guy that he just doesn't like comic book movies because they're popular. I don't like a lot of them, but I am one of the few Ant-Man defenders. I actually enjoyed the first Ant-Man, some of my favorite MCU movies, because they were kind of simple, and it was just like that, almost like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, fun.
Yeah,
of he's small, and he's there's toys, and they're big, and it's kind of fun to see. But again, to me, this looks like, no, now it's Ant-Man, but that doesn't really matter. What really matters is you could interchange him for any other MCU.
Yeah.
And maybe the story will be good, and I like that it's his family. And again, this movie could be my favorite superhero movie in ever. Who knows? But yeah, the trailer to me just looks like this sort of empty sort of spectacle, the end of the world, just visuals that don't look convincing. But hey, if you guys are excited for this, you guys are less cranky than we are. Let us know your thoughts if you're excited for this one. Or if you are like us and saying, hey, maybe let's do something different. But speaking of things that I can't even think of a good segue for this, defiling good art, things that adding color to things that maybe don't need endless color. One of the kind of the main, cultural stories, conversations, things that's been kind of unpacking or kind of unfolding over the last couple of weeks is this sort of viral, it started with one kind of viral video of these individuals that decided to kind of defile a work of art for to make a political point. We'll see if this works. First time here at the Collision Live to pull the video. We'll see if we can play the video and then kind of dive in. Cause I do think there's some interesting stuff to glean from this video.
Security.
What is worth more, art or life? Is it worth more than food? Worth more than justice? Are you more concerned about the protection of a painting or the protection of our planet and people? The cost of living crisis is part of the cost of oil crisis. Fuel is unaffordable to millions of cold, hungry families. They can't even afford to heat a tin of soup. Meanwhile, crops are failing. Millions of people are dying in monsoons, wildfires, and severe drought. We cannot afford new oil and gas. It is going to take everything we know and love.
My favorite part of the video is just you hear like this happened in the UK. There's like the British guy says, "Security, what's up, security here?" So that video that kind of went viral. A bunch of people talking about it, and it's sparked like copycat ones where now like other people are like, I think they're like mashed potato was on like a Monet picture, and like hopefully it doesn't become like where it's just every week it's like what painting what they're gonna throw like corn on the cob at the Mona Lisa or whatever whatever they're gonna do with this. But again, and the point I don't want us to get into like the actual like what they're being activists for, like the climate change, all that kind of stuff is almost like a side discussion. But I do think like the whole like the method, I guess, or like some of this, there is some stuff to kind of unpack and kind of be aware of. But what are your initial? Did you cringe as much as I cringed?
Yeah, I certainly did. I mean, I guess they were definitely seen, and so in that regard, I would say mission accomplished. Whether or not they're taken seriously or their concerns taken seriously is another question. But yeah, it is one of those things that it's like it feels pretty childish, like a cry for help. Like I'm gonna go like, it seems like something my 3-year-old would do. Like just go like
glue your hand to the wall.
Well, more the defiling of art just to like be seen so that people will listen to you. So I guess the method of it is rather interesting. Again, we're talking about it, so in that regard, it was effective. But yeah, it's just sort of, I don't know. It seems rather childish.
It's very much like the performative, which is this seems like so much of activism or just sort of trying to make arguments or anything. It sort of continues to like devolve into this like just sort of spectacle performance gimmick rather than
it's performance art on art.
So it's like it's not like we're gonna like have like an actual like nuanced conversation. It's sort of like notice us. And the irony too, if you're not like again some of that like you got a PhD in like aesthetics, like Van Gogh, like the sunflowers, like in that video, then like Monet's like, you probably couldn't like find two artists in the history of art that like more like loved the beauty of nature and protecting the environment. And like the irony is like they're these painters are probably on their side, like they you're sort of like, we're going to defile this beautiful work celebrating our beautiful world to make a point about how we need to celebrate and protect this.
Well, and I think Van Gogh would have at one point in his career would have happily taken a can of soup, because like I don't think he was exactly well off for quite a while. You probably know his story.
Yeah, definitely.
I think
died in like poverty. I think he only sold one painting in his life, so definitely not successful. Even though these paintings now are worth like hundreds of millions of dollars. And again, if you're not the paintings themselves are like in glass. Like the paintings aren't damaged. Like they just take it off. Like they take way more care. So no permanent harm was done. I'm sure the janitors weren't happy about that. But I did kind of like, maybe one of my takeaways for this is, I know like deconstruction has become like the buzzword lately, at least in
Yeah.
the circles that I tend to find myself in, and I kind of is applied to a lot of things like faith, and I got to deconstruct your faith, and I got to deconstruct your upbringing, and again, I think there's a lot of value.
The patriarchy.
Yeah,
Don't
the
forget.
patriarchy. There's a lot of value to kind of question and think through, and so not necessarily a comment on that, but I think this sort of type of like activism kind of shows like when that becomes less of like an act and like more of like a worldview of like this drive to like, in order to build anything up, like you must like destroy and defile and tear down things, and like in order to celebrate creation and like the world, you need to like defile beautiful art and creation. And you just sort of see it as a destructive kind of a destructive approach, and it seems at least from what I've seen, like that like most people think that this is ridiculous. Like I don't know if it's
Probably.
necessarily like converting people to the like, oh well, I wasn't sure, but once you start defacing the art I love, then I started thinking
Maybe I should, drive less or whatever. But I think the I think the other thing about it too is, like, I didn't hear one solution being proposed, and I think that's the problem too. Is this sort of deconstructionist mindset? Is it's like, well, first we need to burn it down, and then we'll figure out what to do. And it's like, well, that's sort of idiotic and perhaps even suicidal at like a society level. It's like, well, first we'll destroy everything.
well,
it's
like
like,
look through the ashes,
and
like,
then maybe something will just magically appear, out of the ashes, and we'll all be better off. And so it's really sort of a nihilistic, I think, view of the world, and sort of having these worldviews about the climate or whatever else. And there's seems to be, at least on the surface, very little thought put into like, well, so what's the solution? Like, defiling artwork is not going to feed people, and so like, sure, we can have a conversation about it, but very often it's more about like, tearing down the existing structure without regard to what's going to take its place.
yeah, it's very much like a just gonna burn it down. Look at us, kind of performance based. I do think like more and more of just like debates and discussions about other issues beyond just like the global warming kind of issue are just gonna, because of like the internet and like the power of like going viral, and like it's gonna become more and more like this, where it's just sort of like you don't really need substance, you just sort of need to like catch people's eye. But hey, let us know what you guys think of that. Were you guys as disturbed as maybe I was seeing that tomato soup going on that beautiful picture? Love to have a conversation if you guys see, hey, maybe you guys were moved by it, but tell us why. We can move to the next story. McDonald's. Another meaty subject to talk about. Meaty as in a Big Mac, as in an adult Happy Meal. So this is a story that
Finally,
the wait is over. So this is a story that it might seem, and maybe it is sort of a trivial thing, but I do think this almost like encapsulates so much of society and like the way these things are set up. So if you're not familiar, and I don't know exactly like where, I don't think this is like global. I think it's like specific locations have started offering a adult Happy Meal. So this is not like the kid Happy Meal with like a couple nuggets and fries. This is an adult one with like a Big Mac and fries, and also a toy, because hey, sometimes adults just need toys too. But this thing is wild for many reasons. So they started doing this, I think like the PR sort of like to tap into like the nostalgia. People are nostalgic for the days when they used to get Happy Meals. Like, you don't need to, that doesn't need to be a thing of the past. It can be a thing of, the now, 35-year-old, 40-year-old, go get a Happy Meal, get your toy, the joy of opening it. So it's kind of like tapping into that. I saw like some of the response from people that have like got these Happy Meals. One is like the price. I think, I forget what the exact breakdown is, but it's basically like the price of a Big Mac and fries, but like plus like $4. Like you're basically just buying a meal, an adult meal, but like and paying like $4 for whatever this plastic toy, for the cardboard box or whatever the price is. But because hey, nostalgic pushes inevitably turn into cash grabs and just sort of big commercialists, money, money, money. So the toys on these already have been like listed on people that have got these Happy Meals have like listed these toys for like $300,000 and like plus shipping. Like you gotta also pay like $6 to ship this toy, and just trying to like game the system and make money off of this nostalgia, which to me is like a perfect picture of where we are in like pop culture and society. But are you like, would you get an adult Happy Meal with a smile on your face?
Sure, if someone else got it for me, I guess. Like I don't know. Like I haven't eaten at a McDonald's in probably since I was a kid. But no, I'm sure I've eaten there since then. But no, I think it just seems really really strange that they would do this. But I think it's also I do think it points to sort of this larger need for, I guess it seems like it's maybe millennials driving this. It's like we want to have all the things from our childhood, but like we want to have them like as adults. And I just think it perfectly hits all those different points. I think that so many of the things that I think are sort of overdone maybe with our society and perhaps even like our generation is it's like, let's just relive our childhood, but as adults and never grow up and like just I don't know.
So you
like,
can't even it's like don't even go to your fast food place without feeling the nostalgia. And I just find it hilarious that within like days it just became a complete like trying to like
cash grab
for like we're gonna charge you extra for your nostalgia. Like we want you to feel good, but also we want your like $18 for a Happy Meal. And people are trying to like take the joy out of it. And I think like the toys too are just like, they're not like fun nostalgic toys. It's like whatever's the sponsor company that's sort of helping do this, it's just like their mascot or something. Like it's just some dumb toy that even like my own 7-year-old kids would be like, is this the only option? Like, so again, it's hilarious, but I do think it is this sort of another example of like this nostalgia is the be all and end all for so much of what happens in our culture today. But maybe the last culture conversation, and then we'll get into to our main topic get into kind of Halloween and stuff. This one is a bit more icky. This one maybe a bit more to get into. Based on She-Hulk, which I think just finished its first season, and I've heard mixed things. I've heard people that just think it's the greatest thing ever. Everything I've seen about it looks like it's just the worst thing ever. But hey, who am I to judge? And I guess to disclaimer, neither of us have watched She-Hulk.
No.
And neither of us will probably watch She-Hulk. So it's not necessarily a comment on like how the show has done this.
Certainly not top of the queue.
Yeah, it didn't quite make it to the top of the list. I just think it looks terrible. But hey, if you enjoyed it, I'm happy for you. But so we're not going to get into like, the show itself. But there is a quote kind of from the director that I do think we can get into just on the basis of that quote and kind of what it represents, and maybe feeding into some of the fears that that society and Christians have had towards sort of Disney and these sort of properties. So this is the director talking about kind of the importance in their eyes of kind of having sex, being a sex positive show while still being able to like appeal and like allow kids to watch it, trying to balance the two of those. Hey, it's a good show about sex. Get your kids on the couch. Let's watch this thing. So here's the quote. That she says, we always felt like there was a fear around sex and around the idea of sex positivity. So it was our job to keep having the conversation. We wanted to say, look, she's a woman in her 30s navigating modern life. Sex is a part of that story. And ask, how far could we go? And says that the actress is game to take the character there. I know it's something that's very important to her, this idea of sex positivity and the kind of smashing the rules when it comes to a woman and the way that they're perceived. A lot of conversations about sexuality in the show came from her and were from this Tatiana, the actor who is She-Hulk. So whoa, that's again, we haven't seen the show. I don't know how sex infused the show actually is. I've kind of seen some like clips and stuff that went around, but just this quote like in isolation is kind of somewhat alarming. Like we've sort of been less Hollywood's or Disney's just sort of sexing up our kids and coming for our kids, and like, but like this feeds into
this
that.
Would say otherwise.
This is like the counter to like, oh, maybe we should be alarmed. But what is your initial? Do you think we need sex positive shows for
children?
For children?
I'm gonna probably go with no. but yeah, I think again, this is one of those things where it's, they can't just make a show, but they feel like it's their duty to like go, make it about some pushing the envelope kind of thing. And it's all these prudes who don't want us to talk about sex or have sex in our shows, and that's why we're here to push the boundaries. It's like, well, first of all, I don't think there's that many people who are like, against sex, and like it's almost like they've sort of put up this facade of like, this is 1950s, and like everyone's just scared of sex, and so we're here to like break that down. It's like, well, like that's definitely not the case now. Just if you look at any of the movies, any of the TV shows, we're not living through this like repressive society, especially when it comes to sex. And so it's like they almost have to put up this false, I don't know, this false like facade of sort of where society is, so that they can then say like, well, we're just pushing the envelopes on where we think the society is, even though society isn't.
It's almost
there.
like if either you like agree with this or else
Right.
you are this. And it's like, well, no, like we're not this. We just don't agree with. And I think maybe some of the because like you said, it is so much of the like it was our job to keep having the conversation and to see how far we could go. Like it's not just like it's not even just like this story pushing it forward. It's sort of like this story is like in service of this mission that we have to expose this or deconstruct this or influence this. And I wonder if some of the again, I think kind of my own opinion on some of that kind of stuff is like, hey, if you have a show and you want to like explore sexual things, like then tell the story. I might not go to that, but it's the like, but it's for the whole family. Like, and I think maybe some of that is that like there's been so much more of like the things that are popular like overlap between adults and kids now. Like I think back in the day, if you have like like kids weren't like watching like The Godfather when they were like 6 or something. There was very much like there's films and there's like kid stuff. Where now it's like adults kind of like sort of kiddie stuff and like kids sort of like adult stuff, and like we sort of all like superheroes, and like this is sort of it's in a weird like, who is this for? Because like you're pushing the envelope here, or else you're like letting it be kind of like a family friendly. We're not gonna expose them to stuff.
Yeah,
but it's hard to find that middle.
Yeah, because you've got like the superheroes, which have always been pretty squeaky clean. I feel like most of their sort of cinematic life. But now you've got like, Deadpool, who's, doing the R-rated superhero movies, and, now they're trying to like, okay, well, what can we do? And we've got Scooby-Doo, but without Scooby-Doo for adults, and it's like we're going to be, exploring all these things using like kids' cartoons to do it. And so it is a really kind of bizarre landscape as far as like audiences go. And I think this goes back, it reminds me of two things. One, the what is it, The Disappearance of Childhood, I think.
Oh, yeah, Neil Postman.
Yeah, Neil Postman book about how like kids can no longer really be kids today. Like they kind of have to grow up way faster, and this sort of like sacred knowledge, or I forget how he puts it, but it's like, these things that you only know once you're an adult are sort of now widely available as kids. And so I think this sort of falls into that category. But also I think it, I think everything kind of comes back to that, like, reminds me of the Hello or Don't Worry, Darling movie, where it's like, you have to watch this movie because it's like we're doing such important things and it's all about sex, and like you need to watch this, and if you don't, then like, you're part of the patriarchy and, you're a bigot or something. Like, so it's like making these movies and then saying like, if you don't watch it, then the issue is with you, not with the movie, and it's just kind of off-putting, I think, for directors, to any director, for any reason, to sort of say like, you have to watch this because it's saying important things or we're pushing important boundaries. It's like, well, we'll watch it if we think we want to, but like, don't get on your soapbox and say like, label everyone who doesn't like your film.
Yeah, it's like a 5-star rating for this movie is a stamp of approval for like gender norms or something, like it's
right,
whatever it is, like it's like equating
right.
the two. So I do think this quote, again, there's more we could get into with that, but it does seem to kind of show that like not everything is an agenda. I think we try to make anything that we don't like, it must be an agenda. Sometimes this is people that disagree telling stories and different perspectives, but sometimes
it is
it's
an agenda.
and there is sort of this weird, and it's especially with the overlap with like the children's stuff, like the family stuff.
Yeah.
I know they're not really making this specifically for kids, but just the idea that like they know this is going to be sort of a kid thing, or not a kid thing, but like it will appeal to a wide audience.
Well, and I think that's just sort of
that.
just sort of the general normalization of adult themes in like broad categories for that reach down to kids.
Yeah, so let us know what you guys think if that is concerned. If you and maybe also if you guys have actually watched the show and see kind of how that actually works out in practice in the show, would be curious to hear that perspective. But kind of moving on, maybe our next segment, which we're going to see, maybe is it more child friendly or is it going to deal with more adult themes? We'll find out with our next segment. We have Host Corner.
Well, you got me going there on all the controversy, so I almost forgot that it was my corner. But so as I said, we went to Panama this past weekend just for a quick little trip. But on that trip, I rewatched the timeless movie Interstellar on the plane. Obviously, plane seat back TV is not the place to enjoy great cinematic masterpieces. However, I just thought, I've seen it, and I've got a baby in my arms, so I'm probably not going to pay too close attention. But I was just struck by how timeless this movie is and how good it is. And I think especially now, like rewatching it after however many years it's been out, having two daughters, like it hits very differently than the first time I watched it. And just this whole, I'd forgotten how much of the story was not them like going through the black hole and like going to those planets and stuff, but it's really just this buildup of, his relationship with his daughter, especially. And then even there were bits in there about like how the school system basically said that like the moon landing was a hoax, so that like more people would focus on like the planet and trying to save the planet, and they can only grow corn now. And I don't know, like I just felt like it hasn't aged at all. And I would give a recommendation to rewatch Interstellar, and it's an amazing score and just a fantastic movie.
Yeah, the score, I think it's Hans Zimmer.
Yeah. It's one of the best.
Awesome score. I don't think I've seen this movie since it hit theaters. Like,
I don't think I had either, and so it was just like, whoa, like this is like.
And I feel like Christopher Nolan movies, like you kind of have to see them more than once because it is sort of spectacle and stuff, but like there is sort of layers. And I remember like the ending was controversial. Without ruining it, does it play better? Like, does some of like the twists and stuff at the end, does it work on the second?
Yeah, I mean, like the whole time travel thing, like there's that. It's like, well, that kind of gets a little bit squirrely, but I think the best of this movie is probably like the first half or so, just where it's setting up those relationships that he has, and just the whole thing I just thought was really, really good. Like, and it just, there's a lot of things that I had missed, and just even like what some of the different characters had done, or.
And I always think of, I don't know the exact quote, and I can't say it like McConaughey because I don't have his voice, but the famous thing where it's like, we used to look to the stars, like now we just look for the dirt. Like,
yeah, no,
I feel like that always comes to mind, just in so many different contexts. Hey, I need to check it out. Hey, if you guys are fans of it, let us know what you guys think of that movie. Does it live up to the hype? Maybe I'll force my wife to watch it again with me this week.
That's good.
But speaking of something else that is maybe good, maybe not good, but definitely has some stuff to talk about, Halloween. So this is Halloween week. This is our last live stream before Halloween, which is on Monday. Again, we missed our opportunity to dress up, so we are...
Once again, next year.
Next year, like we always say, we will dress up. But Halloween, so this is, again, it's like clockwork almost, like it always becomes a conversation for like the church, and like I just wrote an article which we'll be releasing probably later today or else tomorrow, kind of on Halloween. I kind of compare it to like the sports conversations about like LeBron James and like Michael Jordan, like who's the better basketball player. Like it's at this point, like we all everyone sort of has a position. We all know the arguments, and like this every year we just sort of rehash the same. Like it's a pagan holiday. No, roots don't matter. Well, it wasn't. It's all the same stuff. So again, our the point of this conversation isn't necessarily to like sway or like decide like what is the approach.
Yeah.
But I do think there is stuff with Halloween that is important for Christians to think through. Like I don't think concerns about Halloween are like silly or like not valid. Like Christians should be aware with like how they're engaging in like things of the world and all that. And again, if you guys are watching, whatever you think of Halloween, I encourage you guys to share your thoughts in the comment section. Kind of join our conversation about this. I'm trying to remember. I don't think you didn't grow up doing. Because I grew up doing Halloween. I've had my kids do Halloween, so I'm definitely kind of I fall in that side of this conversation. Am I right that you did?
Yeah, I grew up not really celebrating Halloween. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that is sort of like a. And there are a lot of Christians that don't celebrate Halloween. So maybe we're kind of coming at it from two different angles. But what are maybe just some like initial thought? Like this, like again, we're not trying to get into like do it or don't do it, but just sort of like how should we as Christians think about Halloween? How should we think about like engaging with other Christians during Halloween or like, our communities? Or like what do you think about maybe some of the concerns about Halloween?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of Christians are concerned, but I think maybe it's one of those cases where like that we've maybe talked about on here before, like where you're really overblowing the effect of the thing. Like if it's like, I don't know, I guess take Harry Potter as an example. Like, you know, if your kids watch Harry Potter or read the books, like they're not necessarily going to become witches. I think it's sort of the same thing with Halloween. Like, I think a lot of people are like putting too much power on like, you know, whatever the demonic or like occult origins of Halloween are. Like, I think very, very few people have that in mind when they're trick-or-treating door to door or when they're going to a costume party and celebrating Halloween. And so I think for a lot of people, sort of it gets painted as this big boogeyman when in reality, like it's really not that. I mean, I think granted there are some people who are just really into the occult, but chances are the people who are concerned about that are never going to really be crossing paths with the people who are in the occult.
I guess sort of. I guess like maybe two things can be true with like their like dark kind of satanic stuff like is a reality, and like there are communities and people that indulge in that, and that is evil. And I'm sure that those people take advantage of the spooky season to like do their dark spiritual stuff. But like that can be true, and like also like a 5-year-old in a Superman costume getting candy like isn't thinking like, you know, every chocolate bar in his bag is like one step closer to hell
Satan.
Or something like it.
Yeah.
Like sort of there is sort of a distinction between sort of like the more like commercial. And I said before, again, I don't want to get too deep down, like sort of navigating like whether or not to engage with it, but like sort of the whole like origin thing in philosophy is called the genetic fallacy, which is sort of like basing something now purely on like the roots. And I think I think a lot of people will be shocked at like how many pagan things have been carried over, like even like the days of the week, like those are all like Thursday is named after like Thor, like the god, like Sunday was Sol, the sun god, like all the names of the week are named after like the pagan gods. And like we don't think about the fact that like let's go worship, you know, let's go to church on Sunday, you know, to honor the sun god. Like that's just like the terminology. It means very different. Today, I think at Christmas, like was winter solstice, and like the church kind of like, and like Easter was like the fertility goddess and stuff, and like the church sort of like, hey, these are important pagan holidays, like let's do our own thing, like put new meaning to this. And like Halloween isn't quite the same because like, there isn't necessarily like Christian significance. Like it's not like an important day for the church, like Easter or Christmas is, but it is sort of that idea that like the origins matter, but like they're not everything. Like things change. Like you know, a lot of the origins of things are very different from today. And kind of the quote that or the scripture that I get into in the article that I wrote, which I think at least personally is like the closest analogy to like the question of Halloween is Paul when he's talking about like the meat, whether it's okay for Christians to eat the meat sacrificed to that had like previously been sacrificed to the pagan god, which is 1 Corinthians chapter 8. And essentially his like response is like yes and no. It's sort of it said
It depends.
Yeah, it depends. A very wise teacher tactic. Let me answer you that by asking you this. But again, if you're not super familiar with like that passage, like basically it's like, hey, meat's meat. It doesn't like bring you closer to God. Doesn't take you further away from God. Like the question is more like a matter of like conscience. Like if this is going to cause you to stumble, if this is going to pull you away, then like it is wrong, like morally and like spiritually wrong for you to eat this meat. If it's not, then it's okay to eat the meat as long as you're not causing other people. Like it was very much like it's a matter of conscience, but like also love. Like the thing in itself is just a thing. What really matters is like that the church stay united and like loving and doesn't like compromise there. So what do you think? Like that?
Yeah.
Like how does that sort of apply, I guess, to like modern context?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just goes back to this idea of unity in the church, and I think there's always going to be areas that people differ on, and I think you have to realize like, so what are the things that are worth, like what hills are worth dying on, essentially, like what is so important that you need to like confront somebody about, or like you need to have a division in the church about, versus like what are things that are really, they come down to not as like spiritually significant things that we can agree to disagree on. And I feel like Halloween is one of those areas. And then, I mean, I'm sure there's other people who feel like it's not one of those areas. And in fact, they will, split the church and divide over something like this. But I think when you just look at, what is Halloween today? Like take the sort of the history out of it and the origins out of it, and like how is it celebrated today? And is that something that can be affirmed by the church, or is there a way to have a celebration, have a festival at your church or whatever that is not sort of agreeing with the occult, but it can be something that can be just a time of of celebration with church family and that sort of thing. And so,
and maybe this is my sorry to interrupt you. Maybe this is a bit of my soapbox, but I don't mean to come at it like as a negative. I think the judgment goes both ways. Of like, you spiritually weak Christians can't even celebrate Halloween, and then like the other side is like you compromising Christians are going to celebrate Satan's day, and don't you care about your witness? Like both sides can be guilty of divide. It's not like just the one side is and the other side's kind of innocent. But I guess maybe one of my soapboxes for this is like, because like there is a lot of, I think, division, like, and like casting judgment either way. I can remember even like in youth group, it used to be a very clear line. Like we'd always have like a church youth event on Halloween night for like the true Christians, and those that weren't there, like you knew because you weren't there, and like it was just a big mess that like lingered way longer, the effects than any impact from like going trick or treating. But like just the idea that like family fall festival, like I think those are great ideas. We just took my two kids like the other day and they loved it. Great outreach to the community. Like I'm all for family fall festivals, but like this, at least to me, like the irony of those is like, like those sort of exist like as an alternative to Halloween, because out of this conviction that like we can't separate Halloween from like the pagan roots, but like it's essentially Halloween with a different day, like a different name, like a couple of days earlier. Like the people that go to Family Fall Festival are like, can be like very judgmental to those that like, we just can't, it's way too dark and satanic,
but we'll dress up and
we'll
go
dress
to
up
church
and get candy, and it's
get candy
conveniently
there.
the last week of October when we schedule this, and like
just so happens.
Again,
who knew Halloween was just a few days away?
Yeah, well, again, lots of people don't do that. So I'm not like, I don't want to be a judgmental person, but it's just like how much like division and like judgment happens on the basis of like basically doing
the very same
thing
on
just
a
like a couple of days earlier, and like that's sort of what you're judging. So maybe we'll drop the link to the article as soon as it gets published. If you're watching this video later, I do think kind of going back to that Paul verse, that like the motivation is less, not that things don't matter, not that like anything goes, but like the main focus, at least in that verse of scripture, is very much like, how does your decision, like, how is that like a loving decision for like the rest of the church? Like, how does that bring people together rather than like divide? And like,
Yeah.
maybe you need to give up your freedoms for that. Maybe you need to like allow other people to do things that you don't do and be at peace with that. And I feel like those conversations at this point like are almost more valuable than just like
Yeah.
yes, no, good, bad, good Christian, bad Christian. Like those sort of conversations, I don't know. I don't think those go anywhere. It's almost like one of those activist soup things. Like, is it much ado about very little like minds changing? But hey, we do welcome all perspectives. If you guys have some thoughts on Halloween, some ways maybe you navigate it, or ways that maybe you're uncomfortable with, or things that that you see in Scripture, like other verses that maybe relate to the question of Halloween, drop those in the comment section. We'd love to have that conversation with you. But for kind of final thoughts here at the Collision, kind of final wrap up. There was nowhere to fit this into the show, but did you see that ant close-up picture?
No.
I'll need to send it.
Okay.
If you guys are watching, Google close-up of an ant. This picture went viral the other day. It was a real picture submitted to for a contest, and this thing looks like more horrifying than anything you will see in like a Halloween movie ever. This thing looks like some demon, so Google that. Definitely worth that, as long as you don't mind having some nightmares. But any kind of other things going on with you?
No, we're wrapping up a coaching workshop with Blackaby Ministries, and so I think something that kind of ties in well from that is that just learning like in the coaching relationship, learning what things do you really need to challenge someone on, and what things like can you trust God to work out. So I think in this debate of Halloween, like, are there things like that we can say, you know what, I'm going to leave it to God to convict this person one way or the other, or are there areas that you need to step in and speak truth, as it were? So just kind of learning to discern the difference and what actually matters in the church versus what's more superficial.
Yeah, that's why I do think like, the Halloween discussion is valuable to have, because the principles of it can apply to other issues beyond Halloween. And good job on the cross promotion for the coaching workshop that we do at Blackaby Ministries. Google that too.
BlackabyCoaching.org.
Another thing to let you guys know, if you guys haven't checked it out, Black Adam, the latest superhero movie featuring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, hit theaters last week. I saw it. Not a good movie, but some interesting stuff to talk about. I did enjoy parts of it, so I encourage you, if you guys haven't seen it, you're wondering about it, or if you have seen it and want to kind of maybe see some of the themes and stuff going on, check that out on our website, or else watch the video on our YouTube channel. Do you have any final words of wisdom, or are you?
That was it. Know what matters, and learn to tell the difference of them.
So chew on that the rest of this week. And to gear up for maybe the sugar cavities that that you may be getting or may not be getting. But I want to thank you guys for joining us again. We will be live again next Wednesday, and kind of regular schedule on Wednesdays. We'd love to have you join us every week. Or if you can't, watch us later, whatever. We're just glad to have you have these conversations. So thanks for watching, guys. Stay safe and continue to collide with your world for Christ.